Sophie Carter never imagined that her life, frayed at the edges by pain, uncertainty, and the quiet desperation of survival, would be altered by a man whose face had defined cinema for over half a century. She wasn't dreaming of miracles. She wasn't waiting for a savior. She was just a young artist with paint-stained hands and a body under siege, standing on a cracked sidewalk in downtown Los Angeles, trying to turn color into cure. Every morning, she'd drag her folding easel, her box of brushes, and a stack of canvases, each one a silent scream of hope, to the same patch of pavement near the metro stop, where the foot traffic was heavy but compassion was thin. She painted through fatigue, painted through nausea, painted even when her fingers trembled from the chemo. Her art wasn't just expression, it was resistance. Every stroke of the brush was a refusal to disappear. Every canvas, a map of her inner world. Stormy skies giving way to dawn, fractured figures stitched together with gold, lone trees growing in concrete. They weren't just paintings, they were prayers made visible. Most days blurred into the same rhythm of indifference. People hurried past, eyes glued to phones, headphones sealing them off from the real world. A few would pause, offer a sympathetic, "I'm so sorry," or drop a couple of crumpled bills into her tip jar before vanishing into the crowd. But sympathy didn't pay for scans. Kind words didn't fill prescriptions. And the mounting medical debt? It loomed like a shadow no amount of sunlight could burn away. Then, one unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, gray sky, drizzling rain, the kind of day that feels like the world is sighing. Everything shifted. He didn't arrive with fanfare. No entourage, no bodyguards, just a tall man in a worn leather jacket, hands in his pockets, moving with the unhurried calm of someone used to observing more than being seen. It was Clint Eastwood, 89 at the time, though age seemed irrelevant when you saw the sharpness in his eyes. He stopped, not out of curiosity, not for a photo op, but because something in Sophie's latest piece, a stark black and white western landscape, where a single rider faced a vast, empty horizon, called to him. He studied it for a long moment. Then he turned to her and asked, "What's the story behind this?" And Sophie, exhausted but honest, told him, not just about the cancer, not just about the bills, but about why she painted. "Because if I stop, I'm afraid I'll vanish before anyone really sees me." Eastwood listened, not the way celebrities often do, polite, distant, already thinking about their next stop, but with the full weight of his attention. He didn't offer empty praise, didn't promise the world. He simply nodded, as if he understood the language of silent struggle better than most. Then, without fanfare, he reached into his wallet, not for a 20, not for a token gesture, but pulled out a checkbook. In slow, deliberate strokes, he wrote a number that made Sophie's breath catch in her throat. $50,000, enough to cover every remaining treatment. Enough to buy back her peace of mind. Enough to let her breathe again. But Eastwood didn't stop there. Before walking away, he bought the painting, the very one that had stopped him, and said quietly, "Keep painting. The world needs your voice." What happened next wasn't just luck. It was fate with a spotlight. A bystander captured the moment, the legendary actor standing beside the young artist, holding her work like it was treasure. The photo went viral within hours. By nightfall, it had been shared 500,000 times. By morning, it was on CNN, BBC, and the front page of The Guardian. Suddenly, Sophie wasn't invisible anymore. Orders flooded in. From Berlin, Tokyo, Toronto. People didn't just want her art. They wanted to stand with her. Strangers sent letters, care packages, even donations to cover studio rent. Her Instagram exploded. Then came the call she never expected. The Gagosian Gallery in New York wanted to represent her, not as a cancer artist, but as a rising voice in contemporary realism. Within weeks, her life had been rewritten. Her treatments were fully covered. Her studio was no longer a sidewalk, but a sunlit space in Echo Park. Her canvases now sold for thousands, not tens, but the real transformation wasn't in her bank account. It was in her spirit. She no longer painted to survive. She painted to thrive, and then, 1 month after her final chemotherapy session, on the very day she walked into the hospital for her last checkup, she found a plain white envelope in her mailbox. No return address, just her name in careful, looping handwriting. Inside was a letter from Clint Eastwood. No grand speech, no publicity, just 3 short paragraphs. Sophie, saw your new show online. Strong work, honest, never stop telling your story. The world listens when you're real. See, she cried for the first time in months, not from pain, but from the quiet certainty that she mattered. Today, Sophie Carter's art hangs in private collections across Europe and the US. She's preparing for her first solo exhibition in Paris, but in a quiet study in Carmel, California, in a home filled with decades of cinematic history, there's a modest frame on the wall, a black and white Western landscape, signed simply, "For the man who saw me." It's not the most expensive piece in Clint Eastwood's collection, but it might be one of the most meaningful. Because sometimes, greatness isn't measured in box office numbers or Oscar wins, but in the quiet moment one human being chooses to see another, and gives them back their future with a single act of faith.